Here's another example of a great teacher's speech. I had a great teacher once, and her name was Wendy Steiner, Professor Wendy Steiner. She was the chair of the University of Pennsylvania English Department, and she was to become my dissertation advisor, which is a big deal. That one person who's going to help you write this book-long manuscript that's your doctoral dissertation. I was quite pleased to have been able to secure Professor Steiner as my advisor, and it meant that I had passed all of my qualifying exams, I had prepared a proposal, and that I had a plan on how I was to proceed before that very first meeting. 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, I arrived, had my sweater, had my blazer on. I sat 5 minutes early in a very, very fancy Ivy League office with stained glass windows and beautiful shiny wooden desk and bookcases. And promptly at 9 o'clock, as my excitement got bigger and bigger, the door swang open, and there stood the tall, elegant, and impeccably clad Professor Wendy Steiner. She was always well dressed. That day, she had a beautiful black sheath on with this wild silver jewelry thing that she wore, wild hair, perfectly made up, a lovely and stylish and elegant woman. I walked into her office. I had my proposal all set, and she said, Kirk, you may sit there. Let's look at your proposal here, and sit. Let's go. There's no hello, how are you doing? It was just, your proposal, sit now. And she flipped open the front of my proposal, my well-written, impeccably composed proposal, and there were red marks just flowing all over the page. It looked like somebody had stabbed all my black and white writing with an ink pen. It was so marked up. And up to that point, I was sort of proud of my ability to write clear and insightful college prose. But Professor Steiner sat there with her red pen, and sentence after sentence and mark after mark, she went through page after page saying, oh, it's a lovely sentence. Why don't you write that on a little file card? And I would write on a file card. She says, that's great, because you're going to need that sentence someday, but just not here. So 59 and a half minutes later, as the clock was almost striking 10, she said, oh, that will be all for today. She closed the paper. She said, very good. I'd like to see chapter 1 next month. And I just walked out. My legs were shaking, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I'd never experienced anything like that. Just rigorous, non-stop, no-nonsense work for the full hour. And off I went to try to figure out how I was going to work better and stronger and longer for Professor Wendy Steiner. This went on month after month through the whole first year, into the second year of writing, submitting, boom, boom, red marks, boom, boom, red marks. And bit by bit and chapter by chapter, I got to a dissertation draft. And it was the time for that last summer push. I had about 2 or 3 months to go. I had a complete draft, and I just had to go through all the revisions for the final. And I saw Professor Steiner at some party or tea or something or otherwise, and I went up to her and I said, Professor Steiner, Wendy, I was able to call her Wendy at this point. I just want to say I really thank you. I appreciate how much attention you've given my work over these many months. And it was so funny that first day. I was a little taken aback. I thought you were kind of real. And of course, I didn't say bitch. I wouldn't have said bitch. But tough cookie. And she sort of smiled and looked down at me, and she said, well, I am not, and I wasn't. She said, but yes, indeed, I was, how shall we say, particularly well focused. And I said, yeah, what's up? What's up with that? I was scared of you for about, the first 6, 9 months. She goes, well, I'm sorry about that. But the fact of the matter is, you have many other people in your life with whom to exchange pleasantries. You have your classmates, you have other faculty, you have friends and family, but you only have one on this earth. You only have one dissertation advisor, and that is me. And the truth of the matter, Kirk, is that as your dissertation advisor, I refuse to waste even a single moment on trivial pleasantries when the substance of your thinking, the quality of your thinking is at stake. And I sort of took a deep breath and I sort of stepped back for a second, and I felt at that moment the earth sort of move underneath my feet. I refuse to waste a single moment on trivial pleasantries when the quality of your thinking is at stake. I had never, ever had anyone take my thinking, my work, my writing with such seriousness. And it really marked a change in my intellectual life. From that point on, no longer was I working for grades or working for approval or working for any of that hoop jumping stuff that we do in college. I was working because of the quality of my thinking. She was it really changed my attitude as I went into my final draft. I finished, my dissertation was accepted, I graduated, blah, blah, blah. But I've never been the same since. It was the first time in my life someone treated me as a mature intellectual scholar. And I have never gone back. She was a great teacher because she taught me to take my own thinking seriously. What a great gift to learn how to take one's own thinking seriously. So, are you convinced? Was she a great teacher? Now, I think I'm looking at the clock, that may have been closer to 5 than it was to 4, but another example of a great teacher speech. And I wanted to give it to you for your assignment this week, which is a little bit of a surprise, because I'm going to ask you to post a great teacher speech onto your discussion board. Now, last week, you gave one to me as an assignment. And one way to do this assignment, which is, you don't have a lot of time, one way is to just take the recording that you made last week for me and post it on the discussion board. That is perfectly acceptable, especially if you're pleased with it. Some of you worked very hard, you practiced, you rewrote, you revideoed. And if you have a great teacher speech that you're really pleased with, this is a great, easy week off for you. All you have to do is repost your video from last week. But however, if working through last week, if you felt rushed, if you weren't confident, if you weren't pleased with the great teacher speech that you gave last week, here's a great chance for a do-over. And that do-over is just as I gave you Miss Levine with the pink lipstick, and I gave you Professor Steiner with the silver necklace and the scary, scary red bleeding marks on my paper. So if you would like the challenge, if you'd like the stretch, if you'd like the opportunity to revisit this speech shape, you have a chance today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. The discussion board post will be due Wednesday evening. So you've got 3 or 4 days to pull that together if you wish in a second great teacher speech. So you have 2 choices. A, repost last week's on the discussion board, or write a new one and repost it. You'll see this week that all of your original great teacher speeches have been graded. You had up to 100 points for that speech, and now you have up to 100 points for the second version, second iteration, or completely new and different speech. You'll remember, I think you'll see from the example that you just saw, there was a great purpose statement that my great teacher was, very clear. There's sensory details. Black outfit, very tall, very stylish, stained glass windows, red ink on the paper. There was an anecdote about meeting and then a cocktail party and then that I was not a you-know-what. And then a bumper sticker version. This is the hardest part and the most important part of the speech. A sentence or a phrase at the end that really, really focuses the audience on the main point that you want to make. She was a great teacher because take my thinking seriously. And if you've done your job well, the audience will be able to spit it back almost verbatim, almost word for word, because your focus was so very clear. So I want you to enjoy this great teacher speech. I think it is a wonderful, wonderful speech shape. The thoughtful and strategic deployment of anecdotes, of little stories in speeches, professional speeches, motivational speeches, informational speeches is one of the most valuable tools that speakers have to make an argument, to make a case, and to persuade people of the accuracy, of the rectitude of their speech. Yes, she was a great, great teacher indeed.